All right, good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome you to the Leadership Training Foundation's Friends and Investors webinar. I'd like to thank the Texas State Library Archives Commission for providing the funding for allowing us to do this training. And I'd also like to thank Eric Lashley for presenting this training. And we'll get going.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And thank everybody for joining. I am recovering from COVID, so bear with me. This is my first day back. I was in training last week in Florida and caught COVID, so if I sound a little stuffy, I'm feeling pretty good, but I sound kind of rough. But anyway, thank you for coming, joining us. This week, my daughter graduates from college, so that's a good thing. And then next week, I'm on vacation celebrating my 30th wedding anniversary. So big week for the Lashley family here in next week. So this week, I wanted to talk about the Friends, Foundations, and Boards and what those organizations need to be sustainable, what foundations they need to be sustainable, and how, as we as leaders, can work with those boards and make them more effective and efficient. There are a number of boards. Sometimes libraries have multiple boards that they're dealing with. And so I just want to go through kind of like what the boards are, how they're very similar, and what the differences are. So most libraries in Texas, public libraries in Texas, you have either a municipal advisory board that you deal with, or you're a county and you may have an advisory board that you deal with. There are a lot of nonprofit libraries in Texas, so you may just have a nonprofit and you may not be a municipality or under the county government. You may be a library district. There are, 16 or so, under 20 library districts in Texas. Or you may have some kind of weird hybrid system where the building's owned by the city, but it's run by a nonprofit, or vice versa. You also have two normally different types of nonprofits that you deal with. There's usually a friends group, and then other libraries may have a nonprofit foundation. And what are the differences between a friends group and a foundation, and what are the best practices for them? So because there's so many different types of public libraries, we have different types of boards with differing roles. And sometimes they share similar structures. So I just want to go over the different structures and see what the differences are and how they're the same. So if you have a nonprofit board of directors, nonprofit is a 501c3, which is the IRS designation. They should have a really good set of bylaws, which also talks about their purpose. What's the purpose of the nonprofit? And in a lot of cases, it's to run a library, to operate a public library. It should spell out the officers. You either have a chair or president, interchangeable: chair, vice chair, treasurer, secretary. One of the legal requirements with the nonprofit is they need to do the 990 tax return each year. They are the fiduciary responsible for the library. They can approve debt. A lot of nonprofits don't do debt, but you can do debt. You can do a loan for a building or a loan for capital improvement. In a nonprofit library, they often hire and fire the library director. Library director then hires the rest of the staff. A nonprofit board of directors approves policies and procedures. They're often self-appointing. It's not an elected board. It would be best if they had term limits. A lot don't. I put that as a best practice, that they should have term limits, but they're self-appointing. They elect their own board members, and they, again, should have term limits. If they're running the library, they will deal with censorship issues. So appeals for censorship would come to the nonprofit board of directors. They should be doing strategic planning. That's part of what they should be doing. And they should be doing advocacy for the library and the general public. A library district. Again, there are a few library districts in Texas, but they are a legal group. It's like an elected board. They usually follow a geographic district, often a school district. It's where it's in an area where there was no previous library service. Maybe it was a nonprofit at one point, and they held an election to allow a sales tax to fund the library. So the board of directors there is elected. Unfortunately, a lot of times there aren't very many contested elections with library districts. That can be good or bad. But the board is technically elected by the public. The officers, again, are elected by the board, the chair, vice chair, treasurer, secretary. They're the fiscal agent. They work with the county collecting the sales tax They get the sales tax from the county. The board hires and fires the director, approves policies, works on a strategic plan, can approve debt, and deals with censorship when there are appeals. So again, they're a very special breed because there's so few of them in Texas. Library Advisory Board, these are again from usually cities or counties. They create a library advisory board, and the board members are often appointed by the governing body. The city or the county will appoint the board. They advise both the library director and the governing board. I think a lot of times, though, they fail at actually advising the governing board. It's like they get appointed to this board, but then they never communicate back to the county or the city council. Yet that's probably in their charge. If you look at the ordinance or the purpose of how they were created, it usually says that they're there to advise the council or the county. So I think a lot of boards need to figure out a way to actually fulfill that duty. They should have a set of bylaws. The chair is often appointed by the governing body. Sometimes it's elected by the board. It really doesn't matter, but sometimes the board, the council, or the county commissioners will appoint the chair, and then the board elects their own officers. Sometimes there are term limits. Again, I would recommend highly that if they change the bylaws, set term limits. Depending on the bylaws or the ordinance, they may approve policies. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're just advisory. Other times they actually do approve policies. That's one authority that they may have. They do not hire the library director or fire the library director. They should stay out of personnel issues altogether. They often do deal with censorship appeals if it's in the policies that the library has set, where again, if someone challenges a material and the library director keeps the book, there may be an appeals process, and often it goes to the library advisory board. They should be a part of the strategic plan. So again, hopefully, again, they're part of it. They're understanding that. And a big one that, again, a lot of the library boards kind of miss out on is being an advocate for the library. This is such a huge, crucial role. It's often the main job of the advisory board. It's one of those things where you're there, you're appointed to advise and to advocate and be kind of like really have the back of the library. So advocate for the library board or advocate for the library is a huge role of the advisory board. We have two nonprofit groups that are very common in libraries. The first one, the most common, is the Friends of the Library. Everybody's familiar with the Friends of the Library, where they do your book sales. They may have a couple of cookie drives and things like that. They are a membership-based nonprofit. So they should have, again, a 501c3. You would like them to be an official nonprofit. that is filling out their 990 form. This is where a lot of friends groups get in trouble. They don't fill out their 990 form, and then they get a letter from the IRS saying you're no longer a nonprofit. And then they have to work to regain their nonprofit status. Normally with membership-based nonprofits, the board is elected at an annual meeting. So they have a membership meeting. And again, you can tell the strong friends groups from the weak friends groups. So the weak friends groups, they have an annual, membership meeting where all three of the board members show up, and that's their membership, and they reelect themselves. Versus really going out and, having a membership, having a strong membership, having a big meeting where they're talking about all the great things they did for the library and the great things that are happening at the library. And then they have a slate, of candidates to elect a new officers or a new board. So again, they, as a nonprofit, they should have officers, a chair, vice chair, treasurer, secretary, past president. Sometimes they have, again, like this past president, incoming president. They should, again, know their purpose, which again is to raise funds for the library. It's to raise funds normally that are not budgeted for the library. One of the best practices is to actually have a memorandum of understanding between the library and the friends. Sometimes this is intimidating to friends groups, but it really is a great document where it's like, this is your role. This is what the library can help do for you. We can provide space. We can provide this. We can provide whatever you can provide. And this is what y'all are going to do. You're going to provide money for the summer reading program or whatever, bestsellers or whatever the funding that y'all, need, with the funding you need on a regular basis from the friends. The other thing that the difference between, we'll talk about the foundation and friends, is the friends usually also volunteer at the library. They do author events. They do book sales. They do small fundraisers. Some do really large fundraisers, but the most friends groups do really small fundraisers and have, again, a small amount of income through membership. The one thing, again, that they should be doing, which is the most powerful thing for a friends group, is advocacy. And I can talk a little bit, I'll talk a little bit more about that, but the amount of money they can get or the amount of change or sustainability they can get through advocacy is more than the money they can raise. And that just sounds so crazy, but it's true. The fact is, if it's a municipality or county government, that's just the funding. And to put political pressure on the policymakers to fund the library, they'll get more money from the county or the city than they'll ever be able to raise on their own. So advocacy is really important. Now, library foundation, when does a library, what's the difference between a foundation and a friends group? So a foundation is not, it's a nonprofit, just like the friends group. It's not a membership-based group. It is a self-appointed group. The purpose is often for a capital campaign. You usually create a foundation because you're going to build a new building, you're going to expand. There's some big capital dollar amount. You need big money to spend, and you need to raise this big money, and you need a foundation to help do that. Often the board is made up of wealthy donors, people who are, your doctors, lawyers, the accountants, the people who own the meal or whoever, the wealthy donors in your life, in your community, are often on the foundation. They often make investments, so they'll have, a lot of times someone dies, they create an estate, the estate, they take that and invest the money from an estate, and then use that money to help, fund the library programming or things like that. The one thing that can happen with the Library Foundation, because they're often created to for a main purpose of, again, a capital campaign. For a lot of them, it's capital campaign where you need to build a new library. Once a new library is built, they sometimes lose their purpose. And then you get into a point where, what is the point? And can the Friends and the foundation merge? Can a library sustain two nonprofits that the community doesn't often see the difference between? Again, the foundation, one of their major things is to be an advocate. Advocacy, again, having these folks advocate, especially a foundation where these are the movers and shakers. You would hope these are the movers and shakers in your community that have political capital, that if they can advocate for the library, then that's a good thing. So anyway, so those are the different groups. What are the best practices for all the boards? It sounds so simple, but the first one is regular meetings. You could start seeing if you're having problems with your groups, it's usually one of these things here. Regular meetings. If you're having problems making a quorum, that's often a sign of a weak organization. You see this a lot with friends groups or foundations or boards where all of a sudden you can't get a quorum, and people are either ill or they don't take it seriously or they forgot about the meeting. And at that point, you're just seeing a lot of inactivity in the organization. So you really should have a regular meeting, and it should be something that it just doesn't, you just kick the can for the next month. The other one is follow the bylaws. If you have an attendance policy, which I would put in the bylaws, enforce the attendance policy. It's the same thing where if people aren't showing up and they're not showing interest in what's going on, then they don't need to be on the board. It's as simple as that. But it's amazing how often libraries will allow people to stay on boards when they haven't showed up, or they only show up for, a third of the meetings, and they just feel like, well, we can't kick them off, where they're not on. I mean, they're literally not even attending the meetings, and yet people let them stay on. So in some ways, there's lots of easy ways to let people off the hook. They're obviously not showing up to the meeting. So if you have an attendance policy, follow it. It gives you an easy out. Term limits. An organization needs new ideas, new leadership from time to time, and it's rare to have a board. It's not rare, I think, especially in Texas, to have a board where members are lasting, 30 years on an organization. And I saw that a lot when I was working with Plan. You had people who were, there as original members of the library. And there's a lot to be proud of, but there's a lot that you're missing opportunity for other people to serve over those 30 years. It's rare that you have someone who's that, willing to change after being there for 30 years. So again, term limits are really important. The great thing about a healthy organization, when you have those term limits, there are other ways for those people to serve the library. They don't have to be on the board. But having term limits does bring in new people, new ideas. It helps broaden your base of advocates. It's rare that you get a board member who just hates the library after they leave the board. I mean, normally they're glad of their service and all of that, but not having term limits or not enforcing term limits is a really bad sign for an organization. For friends groups and foundations, the library director should be an ex officio member of the board. So that means that they're a non-voting member of the board. The group should not be having board meetings without the library director present, or at least the library director's, designee present. It's okay to have subcommittee meetings without the library director. And it's often a bad sign if the Friends and Foundation are meeting without the library director or their assignee. It's just, again, good best practices. And then advocacy. You got to do that. I want to tell you a story. I was in Florida last week in this training, and it was the Library Journal Design Institute training, where they're designing new libraries or remodeling new libraries. And they have real world cases. And the case they were doing there was a small library and a rural library in Maryland. And it was a very interesting case. So it's a county system outside of Baltimore, Maryland. And they're going to this little community. It probably has less than 1,000 people in the community. And it's in a really isolated area in the county. The county does not have a library per se in that community. There is an independent nonprofit library that has been operating a long number of years outside of the county system in an old church. And it has a board of directors. And for whatever reason, that board of directors has been very territorial and does not want the county to kind of move in and provide services. However, the county residents keep demanding that, they're paying taxes. They want a library in their community. A school closed about 10 years ago. And so the county has now wanting this school to be redeveloped, and they want to put a library inside the school. And so the county started negotiating with the current library that's there, and the current library just kind of brushed them off. And the current library only opens 12 hours a week. So again, I was looking at this as the library director was there, and I was part of the, design team, how we would design it. And I just had to take a step back, and I was like, what was going on there? You have a community that is demanding a library. There's a library already there in operation. And I said, can I just predict that the board was made up of, and like, please do not, these are my peeps, older women, senior women in their 70s and 80s. And they said, yep, that's exactly what happened. And so what you're seeing there is, again, and I said, these board members have been on the board for a long time, right? Yep, that's exactly what was happening. And what you look at, what was really better for the library was for them to merge. What is the best thing for sustainability, for hours of operation, for paid staffing would be to merge with the county. And they just shut it down. And, I would predict once the county comes in and builds a library literally 2 blocks away from the current library, that current library is going to go the way of the dinosaur. So again, for me, it's like best practices would have been for the board to really look at what is their role? What is their purpose? If it's to provide library services, they should have been advocating for the county to come in all along. And then, I think they're afraid they're going to lose their power. So anyway, it was a really interesting fact. And the county at that point had been trying to work with them, and at that point was just going to do it without them. And I think that was a sad thing, and it probably is going to cause a little bit of rift. You know how it is in a small community. It's going to bring a rift into the community. So what is the role of the director? Yeah, so what's the role of the director or the staff? Well, even though these are groups that are independent, the fact is you're the experts. The staff are the experts. Y'all know what the day-to-day operations of the library. They don't. It's okay. That's not their role. However, you do play a role, and you shouldn't just they're different. They're hands-off, be hands-off. You can't. They really need to be a real partner in everything that you do. So the first thing is the agenda. So each board that has a meeting should have an agenda. And a lot of times the library director should, help with that. help craft that agenda, make sure it goes out, just reminder, if you have to be in a little nag or whatever, needs to get out. A lot of times it's going to be the library director is going to need to do an orientation for new board members, show them the bylaws, give them sample agendas, minutes, tour the library. I would definitely try to introduce the staff to the new board members as they come on. Each board should have an agenda item for a report. The director should, have a report that gives the good, the bad, and the ugly. Each board member needs to know the challenges that, the library faces. I think PowerPoint is an excellent tool to show photos of the programs that you do. It's a time to thank the board for their support of the library. The other role of the staff and the directors to educate the board on mission, strategic plan, budget request, and it's about relationships. So board should help the chair do their job, should help the treasurer pay the bills if, hey, this bill needs to be paid. It's a relationship. As you know, we'll talk about when major conflicts come about, and it's usually relationship. Everything should be seen as a partnership. It's not always equal, and then that's just the way it is. That's where I think a memorandum of understanding, a MOU, is so important. Just everybody knowing their roles. And if you do have a foundation and a friends group, there's definitely, what's the difference between the two? The other role of the staff and the library director is to help recruit board members. Your board is only as good as the members. So if you can get people who really are passionate about the library, maybe a diverse group, people who actually look like the users of your library, a diverse in age, race, income. Diverse, just everybody that uses your library. Really, if that can look like your board, look like the people who actually use your library, that's a great thing to do. Let's see here. Yeah, so when you're going through all the stuff that we've been talking about, change management, and when things change, new members come on, understand that is going to be a change of personalities on the board, and how do you change that, or how do you manage that change? So where are the major conflicts that people have with a board? Number one is money. I hate to say it, human beings, oh my God, money. We are just awful about money. And it comes down to, what are we spending money on versus are they hoarding money? And it gets very weird, the dynamics about money and what's this money for? The money was for the library, but a lot of groups, once they actually have money, they don't want to spend the money. It's a really weird dynamic sometimes. But money, again, is really a big, major issue for conflict, or major turning point for conflicts. That's why, again, the memorandum of understanding is really important. Like, what are your, why are you holding back this money? I think a lot of times for the friends groups, it's like a fear that if the council knew that we had this money, they'll cut our budget. And they'll cut it by the amount of money that the friends have. And again, if you create a memorandum of understanding that doesn't allow for that, then it helps protect the friends. Often it's when there's new leadership. So again, there's a new library director that comes in, and the library board or the library, usually the friends or the foundation, a little bit taken back by some of the changes that the new leader is wanting to do, or hey, maybe y'all should think about doing your meetings this way, or whatever it is. It's just that new leaders coming in and sees that things can be run more efficiently or effective, and there's that conflict between personalities. A lot of times there's a difference between the membership and the disagreement between the board members and the leader over the mission, vision, policies, and procedures. And a lot of times some of the boards get involved with policies and procedures that they shouldn't do. It really should not be in their purview at all. This is really, it's tough where a lot of times the friends are also volunteers at the library. And so when you have a new member come in or you're changing policies, especially it's a library that is heavily dependent on volunteers, they also get upset, which then can lead to their role as a board member on the friends. It just, small libraries can be, very tough to manage these different personality types. Communication breakdown, again, is where things are happening and they always feel that communication is always going to be the number one issue, that, we don't understand each other, or you're making changes without, telling us. Personality clashes, a lot of times, again, the new staff versus the veteran staff versus volunteers. And a lot of times, the veteran staff, they're upset with some of the change. We've talked about this, and they try to get the friends and the foundation and the volunteers on their side about all the new changes that are the new directors trying to do, or the new staff are trying to do. And you have this, personality conflict. And then censorship. So there may be, board members that may be more willing to censor materials than the library staff. And they may do it because they don't want to make waves. They feel like, let's just appease the vocal minority out there. And so those are the major issues. So those are the major, concerns that happen with library boards. It's tough. Being a library director, working with boards can be very challenging. Again, you read a lot about friends groups that aren't very friendly to their library, and it's terrible when that happens. But anyway, I've kind of gone through the different types of boards, foundations, kind of the roles and responsibilities. Are there any issues out there that you guys are facing, or that you see that we can talk about or address? I'll just put it out there to the crowd. I love it. Y'all have got perfect friends groups and boards. Is there anybody?
Or do you have a question you want to ask?
Hi, Eric. This is Melissa from Tri-County Library. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. Gwen and I are both in here right now, and it's just is this confidential? It's not going to.
I'm in California, so let's
Okay.
all swear each other to secrecy here. Yeah.
Okay. So what our issue is, and this may be just off topic, but we just had someone pass away, and they left us a large amount of money. So what happened was it went into our library account, but the city went and decided that they're going to redo the community room, which is amazing, but it's more for events and parties. So they said we can use it, but we're kind of limited on stuff now. And there's no communication whatsoever with the library. I mean, with the city and the library. We're kind of just like stepchildren here. So we find out probably just through the neighborhood, or someone comes in and tells us something. So it's very frustrating. And how do we start a relationship with them? We're trying, but it's so difficult. I mean, Gwen and I were without restrooms for over 3 months. They didn't see the issue with getting us a restroom here. So, and Gwen is 84 years old. I mean, we were dehydrated. We were tired. All the dust came in, the asbestos or whatever coming in because this is a very, very old building. So we're kind of stuck. I'm not trying to complain. I love my job more than anything, but it just gets to the point where I don't know what to do.
All right. So are you a nonprofit library, or
We're
what's
a
your
city library.
you're
we're
with the city?
We're with the city.
Do you have a board?
We do not have a board. We go directly to city council, which half the time they don't even want us going to the city council meetings. They're like, oh, you don't have to go. but I have to submit my library report, which they want to see their numbers and all that's going on. So there's just really no, I don't know. I don't know what to do. And Gwen is here with me, and I just need some suggestions, please.
Okay. Do you have a friends group?
We do not, no. And they won't let us have one. They won't let us have a friends group. They're like, no, you guys don't need a friends group. I've tried to.
Okay.
I've tried to do this.
Wow. That's terrible. Well, okay. I got so many questions. Well, first of all, it all comes down to advocacy. You need some people in that community that are movers and shakers that can speak for you, because you're right. The problem is, as an employee, you can only say so much.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's great to have a board that, which I mentioned, advocacy. Great to have a friends, advocacy, because they can do more for you as an advocate. And unfortunately, your council knows that. I mean, that's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of people getting upset and voting them out. You need to find people who are advocates for you. Like even the estate where the person died and left, did they leave the library money or the city money for the library? How did that?
So let me tell you how it happened. Okay. They called me. The lady called me. We would go above and beyond for this lady. She was a real estate lady, and she would come in and we would let her in. I don't live far from the library. So she said, hey, Melissa, can I come in and get some books? Sure. Yeah. It's on a Sunday, Saturday, late, whatever. Sure. So anyways, we did that for her, and she was so appreciative of it. But when after she came in and she says, Melissa, you know what? You guys do so much for me. I'm so thankful to you. When I pass, I'm leaving you money for the library. So she said this, but we're kind of like, just kind of. So I signed for it, and her best friend was the one that was in charge of the will, and she called me and she says, Melissa, what do you need this money for the most? What would you use it for? I want to know. And I said, sure. I said, well, I would use it for youth programming, and that's what they put in the memo, down on the memo. And then we didn't even know this was going to happen. So we had no idea. And all of a sudden, boom, that we have a new community room. It's gorgeous, amazing, beautiful.
So they already spent the money.
Yes.
Oh, there's some legal issues about that. I mean, they can't just spend money that was gifted for another purpose. If it's actually in the will, or the executor of the will made a memo that it's for youth services.
Youth programming, yes.
Youth programming.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I don't know what to do. I don't know.
Well, again, it's
my job.
And that's it's not appropriate for you. I mean, at some point, again, you need advocates. And maybe that person who is the executor can say, excuse me, city attorney, or, Mr. Mayor or whatever, and say, the purpose was not for that. We're glad y'all did that, but that wasn't the purpose. And
exactly.
Maybe you need to, And again, y'all need to find advocates, even if they're, I guess, an unofficial friends group or unofficial. You need people who can, again, learn about these issues, because without a board or a friends group that are talking about the library on a monthly basis because they love the library,
right?
They don't know these issues, and these are really major issues. Like if your bathroom was down for that long, that's unacceptable. And to have someone besides you going and knocking on the door of the mayor or writing a letter to the editor of the local paper, that's what advocates do. They embarrass them to the point where they actually do something what they should have done, or they make sure that never happens, because they know if they ever did that, people will be banging on their door,
right?
Bringing their, sending emails or going off the phone. The thing is, you can be an advocate and still be extremely civil and be nice and sweet. Just showing up and speaking 3 minutes at the council meeting makes so much difference. And you've seen it. If you ever watch council meetings, they will crumble with just a little bit of political pressure. And again, you need to find those people, that are really good, regular users that you feel like, they have a little bit, they're willing to go out and speak 30 minutes at council and put this out there. And this is why advocacy means so much, because, as a city library, That's your funding. That is your, it's going to keep you employed. But anything extra is going to come from political pressure. That's what it comes down to.
So everyone's really connected here. So they're either related. The person that actually remodeled the room the husband is on the city council. So it's just all intermingled there, if you understand what I mean. And it's hard to get my point across without looking like a jerk. So excuse me.
I know. Believe me, I feel for you. It is, you're in a very small community where everybody knows everybody, but that can also work to your advantage at some point where, people start paying attention to the library. That's the only, at that point, that's where you're at. You've just got to find someone that's going to be a champion. And that was one of the big takeaways from the training I went to last week. It was like, you really got to find champions. And, I'm new to this area in Burbank, and I knew that the first day I got here. And one of the guys was telling me, your staff think your job is to run the library day to day. And
right. They have no idea. They have
no idea. And he's like, you know that you're going to lose that battle at some level, or you're then taking your eye off the ball. And the fact is, you need those movers and shakers. And I'm literally going to build, which is insane, $147 million building, which is insane, the amount of money. It's just insane. But to get that done, you have to have the movers and shakers of this city saying, yep, that's a good project. This is a generational project that's going to last 70, years or whatever.
Yes.
But if they're against me and they go, who is this guy coming in from Texas? Who the hell is he? They're
want to
not
trade jobs? I'm from California. I'll trade you. You can come back to Texas. I'll trade you gladly. I'm from Pasadena, so I'm not too far from where you are right now.
Oh my God! So Pasadena, I think
Yes.
they passed a $190 million bond for their library. So
Oh,
it just came out this week, something like that. So
wow. Okay.
yeah, let me see. A Bastrop put in another. What would your recommendation for adjusting a weak friends group to a strong one? Well, again, the weak, I'd like to ask, why do you think they're weak? Is it because, again, there's no turnover, there's no membership? If you've got more information about it, put that in the chat or chime in. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is, again, come up with membership. And it just, at $10 a membership or whatever it is, have a membership drive quarterly just to get it going. Get excitement about, a lot of times it's based around children's programming. Everybody wants to give money to the children's program and getting people excited. Maybe try to get some of the young moms who are doing the preschool or the young parents attending preschool. It's about membership, and then getting that membership, creating a board that has bylaws that they follow, that there's turnover. A lot of times it is, and again, I made a thing about older people being on the board. Well, those people actually have the time. It's the difference between being on there for 30 years versus I just retired and I want something to do. Those are great people. The people who are just retired and want something to do, grab them, because they are used to, being in charge or doing things like that. And they can give you a couple of good years, but don't let them stay forever. They can give you that new energy that you need to get things done. The fact is, it's really hard to get people who are working. That's why I said moms who may be stay-at-home moms or stay-at-home dads that have time that can, until the kids get into school, those early retirees. But you got to get people, and if there's something happening in Bastrop, that there's some movement on something to get people excited about, try to hook them that way. But the best thing is to get membership, even at the low price, and just do a fun event as a membership drive, as a hot dog and popcorn and whatever, whatever it takes. And then have a little sales pitch like, these are the things that we're going to do at the library. You want to, again, get enthusiasm about the library and how they can help the library. or just, again, it's not all about the fundraising. The fact is the advocacy that they can do is so much more greater than the fundraising. Do you think my friends could raise $147 million for a new building? It just, they couldn't. There's no way that our friends, and I have a strong friends group here in Burbank, but that is just, and one of the facts is they haven't done a foundation here, and they should have done a foundation. When you're trying to raise that kind of money, you need to have naming rights. And we have Disney here, Warner Brothers. We have some major corporations in this community that their headquarters are here in Burbank, but they have not established any way to raise money from those big donors. So guess what? I'm trying to bring in those big donors and figure out a way to get them involved through a new foundation for naming rights. But it's all about enthusiasm. If the board is not, the problem is a lot of times with libraries too, and I'm an introvert. I have to play an extrovert at work. And the problem with introverts is that, libraries do bring in introverts, and they don't like to be salespeople, and they like to be quiet, and they like to read. I mean, that's one reason they were attracted to the library. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being an introvert, but if you can find some extroverts, some salespeople to be on your board, that was the best thing for us. When I was in Georgetown, we had some people who were just salespeople. Oh my God, they could sell you anything. And to have them literally sitting in the lobby during membership drives, you couldn't walk past them without them, talking to you, and just they had that gift of gab, and people were like just paying them money to get away from them. Here's my membership. But then again, once that membership took off, it's like you just kept raising it. I mean, Georgetown now I think has over 1,600 members of their friends group. It's crazy, but it's funny. I remember when I was there, when I started in the late 90s, the friends almost went bankrupt. They just almost shut down. And to go from, a handful of members to 1,600 was amazing. And, it started very slow. And then, we would go, we're going to have 100 members, 200 members, 300 members, 500 members. And I remember when we hit 500 members, we thought, we were we'd done it. And I remember saying 750. And they were like, we'll never do 750. We did 750 and it was like 1,000. We'll never do 1,000. We hit 1,000. You just have to just raise the bar. And, being enthusiasm is what it takes, but you need some of those people who are really, ready to sell it. All right. Anybody else out there? Tri-County had a doozy as a issue. Any other issues out there? All right. If not, then I will end this. This has been a good session. Thank you. I'm feeling a little more energized after this than I was this morning. I guess I will see y'all in like 2 weeks. I'll be in the Bahamas celebrating my 30th wedding anniversary next week. So thank you guys, and I'll see you one more time.
All righty. Well, thank you very much, Eric, for your time today, and appreciate the presentation. So thank you all. I'll get this recorded, and I'll get it sent out as soon as I can.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you. Y'all have a good day.
All right. Bye-bye.